My wife dumped me after doubling my salary, expected me to come crawling back. Instead, I built a life she'll never be part of. 3 months ago, my wife Natalie walked into our apartment like she'd just conquered a small country. She'd gotten the promotion, Director of Operations. The salary was absurd. Like stupid money. We're talking 6 figures with bonuses that probably exceeded my entire annual salary. Company car, stock options, business class flights to Singapore. I was genuinely happy for her. She'd worked hard for this. Insane hours, constant stress, dealing with office politics that would make anyone lose their mind. I told her that, meant it, too. I hugged her, made her favorite dinner. We celebrated, but something felt off from the beginning. There was this look in her eyes. Not joy exactly, more like vindication. She kept mentioning the salary, how much more she'd be making, how this positioned her in the company. I listened and asked the right questions, but underneath the celebration, there was this weird energy building, like she was already measuring everything differently, including me. That first night set the tone for everything that followed. She talked non-stop about her new responsibilities, the team she'd be leading, 12 people reporting directly to her, the international trip she'd be taking, Singapore for a conference, London to meet with a European division, Tokyo for client meetings. The company was putting her up in 5-star hotels. She'd have an expense account, a corner office with windows overlooking the city. I listened, nodded at the appropriate times, asked questions about her plans. But there was this weird energy filling the room, like she wasn't telling me these things to share her excitement. She was informing me, updating me on changes to her status, like I was a stakeholder who needed to be kept in the loop, but wasn't really part of the actual operation. I'm a high school history teacher, have been for 6 years. I teach at a public school on the east side of the city. Sophomore and junior level courses, mostly American history and world civilizations. It's not glamorous work. The pay is decent, around $50,000 a year with benefits. Not Director of Operations money, obviously, but enough that we'd lived comfortably up until now. We'd always split bills 50/50ths or close to it, depending on who made slightly more that year. Took modest vacations, long weekends to nearby cities, camping trips in the summer. We had savings, paid our rent on time, lived within our means. Normal, responsible stuff that normal, responsible couples do. I'd never felt inadequate about my job before. I like teaching. Loved it. Actually, there's something satisfying about watching a kid who hated history suddenly get excited about the civil rights movement or the fall of Rome. Those moments when you can see understanding click into place. That's why I do this job. Not for the money, for the impact. But that night, lying in bed next to her while she scrolled through her phone, responding to work emails at 11 at night, I felt this strange distance growing between us, like she was already moving to a different elevation, and I was still standing on ground level watching her ascend, like she was already somewhere else, and I just hadn't gotten the memo yet. Over the next 2 weeks, things got progressively weirder. She started coming home later, 9, 10 o'clock, walking in on the phone about quarterly projections, barely acknowledging me. I'd have dinner ready, but she'd wave me off, saying she'd eaten at the office. Our conversations became completely mismatched. I'd tell her about my day, how I'd finally gotten my juniors interested in the Civil War through primary sources, how a struggling student aced his Reconstruction exam. She'd nod without listening, then pivot to market strategies and operational restructuring. I'd mention the balcony garden we'd talked about planting. She'd look at me like I'd suggested competitive bread making, then start talking about her new company car. We were living in the same apartment but existing on different planets. The affection dried up. No random hugs, no asking about my day and caring about the answer. No inside jokes, just polite distance like roommates coexisting until one found better accommodations. I noticed her studying me sometimes. This evaluating looked like she was running calculations, measuring value. It made me feel like an asset being assessed for depreciation. I tried bringing it up 3 weeks after her promotion. Asked if everything was okay between us. She looked surprised, said everything was fine. She was just adjusting to new responsibilities. Then she kissed my forehead like I was a worried kid and went back to her laptop. That's when I knew something fundamental had broken. You don't kiss your partner like they're a child unless you stop seeing them as an equal. I started feeling low-level anxiety all the time. Walking on eggshells, trying to be supportive but not needy. Present without being a burden. Occupying space without taking up too much of it. Exhausting in this quiet, soul-crushing way. Then came the night that changed everything permanently. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd stayed late at school for parent-teacher conferences and came home exhausted around 7. She was already there, which was unusual. Sitting on the couch in the living room, not on her laptop, not on her phone, just sitting there with this strange expression on her face, determined, resolved, like she'd made a difficult decision and was steeling herself to execute it. She asked me to sit down. The way she said it, calm, controlled, with that corporate meeting energy, I knew immediately this wasn't good. My stomach dropped for a second. I thought maybe she was sick. Maybe something terrible had happened. Maybe her promotion was being rescinded. Saturday. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she started talking. She told me her life had changed trajectory, that her career had taken her to places she'd never imagined possible, that her goals and aspirations had evolved significantly over the past few weeks. She said she'd had time to reflect on what she needed in a partner, what she needed to reach her full potential. She said she'd become fully self-sufficient now, financially independent in ways she'd never been before. She didn't need the traditional support structure of a marriage anymore. She needed freedom to focus on her career without restrictions. She needed to surround herself with people who operated at her level, who understood the pressure and responsibility that came with real power. She said she thought we should divorce just like that. Clinical, efficient, like she was terminating an underperforming contract. I sat there processing the words. 8 years of marriage, 8 years of building a life together, 8 years of supporting each other through career changes and family funerals and health scares and financial stress. 8 years of inside jokes and shared dreams and comfortable silence and knowing each other's coffee orders by heart. And now I was a restriction. Dead weight she needed to shed to reach her full potential. Part of me wanted to fight to remind her of every good moment we'd shared. To argue that relationships aren't supposed to be about salary comparisons or career trajectories. That marriage is supposed to be about partnership and support and choosing each other even when things get hard. Especially when things get hard. I wanted to tell her that I'd been there for every step of her journey. Every late-night study session when she was getting her MBA. Every terrible boss she'd complained about. Every promotion she'd been passed over for. I'd celebrated every win and cushioned every loss. I'd believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. And now, the second she didn't need me anymore, I was disposable. But another part of me, the part that had been watching her pull away for weeks, the part that had been walking on eggshells and feeling like an inconvenience in my own home, felt something I didn't expect to feel. Relief. Not happiness, not vindication. Just this quiet, exhausted relief. I realized in that moment that I'd been living in a constant state of anxiety ever since her promotion. Trying to be enough. Trying to match her energy without making her feel like I was competing with her. Trying to be supportive without being clingy. Trying to share her enthusiasm without sounding jealous or small. Trying to maintain my own identity while feeling it slowly suffocate under the weight of her success. I'd been shrinking myself to make room for her expansion. Making myself smaller so she could feel bigger. And I was exhausted from the effort. Looking at her sitting there on our couch, already emotionally detached from our marriage, already planning her exit strategy, I realized something critical. I didn't want to fight for someone who saw me as a burden. I didn't want to convince someone I was worthy of keeping around. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life trying to prove I deserved to be loved. So, I didn't beg, didn't plead, didn't promise to change or become someone different. Didn't offer to get a higher paying job or go back to school or somehow make myself worthy of her newly elevated standards. I just looked at her and said, if that's what you think will make you happy, I won't stand in your way. My voice came out calmer than I expected. Steady, like I was agreeing to reschedule a dentist appointment instead of ending my marriage. Her expression changed when I said it. The resolve flickered. She looked confused, almost disappointed, like she'd been expecting a different reaction. Like my calm acceptance was somehow worse than the emotional breakdown she'd probably anticipated. I think she wanted me to fight, to beg, to give her the satisfaction of being desired, even as she rejected me, to confirm that she was valuable enough to fight for, even if she'd already decided I wasn't. But I was too tired to perform that role for her. The divorce process was remarkably quick and surprisingly painless from a logistics standpoint. We didn't need lawyers fighting over assets because we barely had any assets to fight over. No house, no kids, no complicated investments, just an apartment we rented, 2 cars, and some modest savings we'd accumulated over the years. Natalie was incredibly generous with the whole thing, which somehow made it worse. Made me feel like she was paying severance to an employee she was letting go, compensating me for my service to make herself feel less guilty about the termination. I kept the Honda. It was technically in my name anyway, fully paid off. Nothing fancy, but reliable. We split our savings account straight down the middle. She didn't argue about any of it. Didn't try to nickel and dime me or claim she deserved more because she'd been the higher earner toward the end. Just accepted my proposals for division and moved forward. She found a luxury loft downtown within a week. One of those modern places with floor-to-ceiling windows and an open-concept design walking distance from her office. The kind of place you see in architectural magazines that costs more per month than most people's mortgages. She signed the lease immediately, started packing the same day. I helped her pack. Weird, right? But it felt like the thing to do. We moved through the apartment in this strange choreographed dance, separating 8 years of shared life into his and hers. She took the nice cookware set we'd gotten as a wedding present. I kept the cast-iron skillet I'd bought in college. She took most of the furniture since she was moving to a bigger place. I kept the couch and the bed, both of which we'd owned before the marriage anyway. The whole process took 2 weeks from the conversation to her moving out. Clean, efficient, like dissolving a business partnership that had run its course. I stayed in our apartment, the same place we'd rented together 3 years earlier when we'd moved to this part of the city for her previous job. Modest 1-bedroom in an older building, not falling apart, but definitely not luxury. Decent neighborhood, close to my school, affordable rent, the kind of place normal people with normal jobs live in. Suddenly, it was just mine. The apartment felt huge and empty with half the furniture gone. I'd walk through rooms and notice the gaps where things used to be. The empty spot where her bookshelf had stood, the bare wall where her framed degrees had hung, the kitchen cabinet that now only held my mismatched mugs instead of her matching ceramic set. The first week after she left was brutal in ways I hadn't anticipated. I'd wake up in the morning and reach for her side of the bed out of habit. My hand would hit empty sheets, and I'd remember she was gone. I'd make coffee and automatically pull out 2 mugs instead of 1. Then stare at the extra mug like an idiot before putting it back. I'd come home from work and start to call out that I was home before remembering no one was there to hear it. I found her stuff everywhere. Hair ties on the bathroom counter, a sweater in the back of the closet, one of her running shoes under the bed, random artifacts of a shared life that no longer existed. Each discovery felt like getting punched in the chest. I didn't reach out to her. She'd been crystal clear about not needing me anymore, about me being a restriction on her potential. What was I supposed to do? Call her up and beg her to reconsider? Offer to somehow become worthy of her newly elevated standards? Promise to get a higher-paying job so I'd be less embarrassing to have around? No thanks. I've got standards, too. And one of them is not begging someone to love me. But I also couldn't just sit in that apartment drowning in memories and self-pity. I needed to do something. Anything. Something that felt like moving forward instead of staying stuck. I'd been meaning to get back in shape for years. I'd put on weight teaching. The job doesn't keep you active. I used to run in college. Nothing serious. Just casual running to stay in shape. But that was years ago. Standing in my empty apartment that first weekend after Natalie moved out, I realized I had no more excuses. No one to prioritize above myself. Nothing but empty hours and thoughts I needed to outrun. So I found my old running shoes from college and went outside. It was horrible. I made it maybe half a mile before my lungs started screaming. Had to stop and walk, gasping. A teenager on a skateboard passed me looking concerned. I walked home feeling defeated. But the next morning, I went again anyway. Made it 3/4 of a mile. Small progress. Third day, I made a full mile without stopping. Felt like winning an Olympic medal. I started going every morning before work. 5:30 a.m. The routine gave me structure, something to focus on besides the empty apartment and failed marriage. Running became my therapy. Every step felt like putting distance between me and the person I'd been in that marriage. The guy who'd felt never quite good enough. The guy who'd measured his worth by someone else's salary. After 2 weeks, I bought actual running shoes from a specialty store. The new shoes made a difference. I pushed past 2 miles, then 3. Started following basic training plans online. I joined a gym. 2. Planet Fitness. $10 a month. Started going 3 times a week. Basic weightlifting from YouTube videos, bench press, squats, deadlifts. The first few weeks were humbling. I was weak, but nobody cared. Everyone was too focused on their own workout. After a month, I noticed changes. Lost a few pounds, had more energy, clothes fit better, face looked less puffy, but the bigger changes were internal. I felt like I was building something fundamental, a version of myself that existed independent of anyone else's approval. My buddy Jake from the history department noticed around week 5. He taught European history and coached cross-country, always trying to recruit teachers to his weekend running club. I'd always said no. Too busy. Too married to someone who found my hobbies uninteresting. Now I had time. The running club met Tuesday and Thursday evenings. 10 to 15 people usually showed up. Everyone was friendly, welcoming. No one cared that I was the new divorced guy who could barely keep pace. We'd run for an hour, then sometimes grab food after. Normal conversation between normal people who weren't trying to impress each other with career achievements or salary brackets. I'd forgotten what that felt like, being around people who just accepted you at face value. One of the regular runners in the club was named Rachel. She worked as a librarian at the main public library downtown. Mid-30s, quiet in that comfortable way some people are. Not shy exactly, just someone who didn't feel the need to fill every silence with unnecessary words. She listened more than she talked. When she did talk, it was usually something dry and funny that caught you off guard. She'd been running with the club for 2 years. Solid runner, consistent pace, never complained, never made excuses, just showed up and did the work. We started running together more often after my first month with the club. Not intentionally at first, just happened naturally. We had similar paces, similar running styles. Neither of us were trying to set speed records, just steady, maintainable, forward progress. We'd run and talk about nothing important. She told me about problem patrons at the library. The guy who came in every day to use the bathroom and watch videos on the public computers. The woman who insisted the library was hiding specific books from her personally. The teenager who'd asked for book recommendations and ended up reading the entire fantasy section in 6 months. I told her about my students. The kid who'd written a 10-page paper on the economic causes of World War I entirely in meme format. The girl who'd gotten so invested in the civil rights movement that she'd organized a school-wide educational assembly. The class clown who'd somehow become the most knowledgeable student about Byzantine history through a weird rabbit hole of internet research. Normal conversation, easy, comfortable, no performance required. She never asked about my divorce directly, never pushed for personal details. But about 6 weeks into running together, she mentioned she'd been through a divorce herself 3 years earlier. Her ex-husband had been a lawyer, worked insane hours, prioritized his career above everything else, including their marriage. One day, he'd come home and told her he'd accepted a partnership at a firm in another state and expected her to quit her job and move with him. No discussion, no consideration of her career or her life. Just an expectation that she'd follow. She'd said no. He'd been genuinely shocked. Couldn't understand why she wouldn't sacrifice her entire life for his opportunity. The marriage had ended within 6 months. She told me this while we were running up a particularly brutal hill. Said it matter-of-factly. No bitterness, no anger, just stating facts about something that had happened and been processed and moved past. I appreciated that. The lack of drama, the acceptance that sometimes things don't work out and that's just life. I told her about Natalie. Not all the details, just the basics. Wife got a massive promotion. Decided I didn't fit her new lifestyle. Asked for a divorce. I agreed. She moved out. Here we are. Rachel nodded. Didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. Just said, that sounds hard, but it seems like you're handling it well. Simple statement, but it meant more than all the I'm sorry and her loss comments I'd gotten from other people. She saw me as someone who was dealing with a difficult situation and moving forward. Not a victim, not someone to pity, just a person handling his business. I like that. We kept running together. Started grabbing coffee after Tuesday runs. Then coffee turned into grabbing breakfast at this diner near the trail. Then breakfast sometimes extended into walking around downtown just talking. It wasn't dating, not officially. Just two people who enjoyed each other's company spending time together. No pressure, no expectations, no complicated relationship discussions about where this was going or what we were to each other. 2 months after Natalie left, I ran my first official 10K race. The running club had organized it. Everyone was participating. Different distances. 5K, 10K, half marathon. I'd signed up for the 10K, figuring it was achievable, but still challenging. Race day was cold. October morning with that sharp wind that makes your lungs burn when you breathe hard. I showed up nervous. Hadn't raced anything since college. Wasn't sure what to expect from myself. Rachel was running the 10K, too. We'd trained together on the same routes, same pace. She suggested we run together during the race, keep each other motivated. I agreed. The gun went off. We started running. The first mile felt great. Second mile, my legs started questioning my life choices. Third mile, I was mentally negotiating with my body to just keep moving. Fourth and fifth miles were pure stubbornness. Final kilometer, I had this weird burst of energy, knowing the finish line was close. Crossed the finish line at 52 minutes and change. Not impressive by serious runner standards, but for a guy who couldn't run half a mile 3 months earlier without wanting to die, it felt like winning an Olympic gold medal. Rachel finished 30 seconds behind me. We were both sweaty and exhausted and grinning like idiots. Jake and some of the other running club members were waiting at the finish line, cheering, taking photos, making way too big a deal out of what was essentially a casual community race. But it felt good being celebrated for something I'd actually worked for, something I'd built from nothing through consistent effort. Jake posted photos in the group chat later. I looked at them that night. Me at the finish line, sweaty, exhausted, wearing a ridiculous race bib and a smile that looked genuinely happy. I saved that photo. Reminder of what was possible when I stopped waiting for someone else's approval and just did the work. I kept the momentum going, signed up for more races, started meal prepping because eating takeout constantly was killing my progress. Discovered I actually enjoyed cooking when I wasn't doing it while stressed about work and marriage problems. My apartment stopped feeling like a museum of failed marriage. I rearranged furniture, donated stuff we'd accumulated that I didn't need, bought plants because why not? Made it mine. 3 months after the divorce, I ran into one of Natalie's work friends at a coffee shop. She did this weird thing where she looked shocked to see me, like she'd expected me to be home in the dark, crying into a pillow. She asked how I was doing. I said, good. She kept staring at me like I was lying. Asked if I was sure. I said, yeah, I was sure. Joined a running club, training for a half marathon. Loving my job. All good. She looked confused. Said she'd heard I was devastated. I told her I'd been sad about the divorce, but I'd moved on. She nodded slowly, clearly not believing me, and made some excuse to leave. That interaction stuck with me. It was clear Natalie had been telling people I was falling apart without her, that I'd be lost, broken, begging for her back. The idea that she expected me to fall apart was almost insulting, like I was some pathetic character in her story who couldn't exist without her approval. I decided right then to delete her from my social media, blocked her number, not out of anger, just out of necessity. I needed to move forward. Keeping tabs on her life wasn't healthy for either of us. Rachel and I started spending more time together outside of running. Got coffee, saw a movie, went to a bookstore, and spent 2 hours just wandering around. It wasn't dating exactly, just two people who enjoyed each other's company. One night after a group run, everyone grabbed food at this Mexican place downtown. Rachel sat next to me. We talked about nothing important. She mentioned she'd been thinking about adopting a dog. I told her I'd always wanted a dog, but Natalie was allergic. Rachel said, "Well, now you can get one." It was such a simple statement, but it hit me hard. She was right. I could get a dog now. I could do a lot of things I'd put on hold for a marriage that no longer existed. 2 weeks later, I adopted a 3-year-old mutt named Cooper from the shelter. Best decision I'd made in months. Coming home to a wagging tail and unconditional excitement made the apartment feel less empty. Rachel met Cooper on our next run. He loved her immediately. She brought him treats she'd researched online for his specific breed mix. That's when I realized I was falling for her. Nothing dramatic, no lightning bolt moment, just this quiet certainty that I wanted her around more. That she made my life better in ways that had nothing to do with money or status or proving anything to anyone. We started officially dating a month later. Took it slow. No pressure, no expectations, just seeing where things went. She had her own place but started staying over more often. Brought her toothbrush, left clothes in my closet. It felt natural, easy, like we were building something together instead of maintaining something out of obligation. I gave her a key to my apartment 4 months after the divorce. Not because of some timeline or societal expectation, just because it made sense. She'd come over after work sometimes before I got home from school, take Cooper for walks, start dinner. It felt like partnership. Real partnership, not the performance version I'd been living before. Around this time, my sister Amy called me. She sounded weird on the phone, asked how I was doing in that careful way people do when they're about to drop bad news. I told her I was great. She paused, then asked if I'd talked to Natalie recently. I said, "No, why would I?" Amy said Natalie had called her a few days earlier, asked how I was doing, wanted to know if I was okay, if I was struggling. I laughed. Told Amy I was genuinely doing better than I'd been in years. Amy said that's what she told Natalie, but Natalie didn't believe her. Kept pushing, kept asking if I was hiding my pain, if I was secretly falling apart. Amy said Natalie sounded desperate to hear that I was miserable. Like she needed confirmation that leaving me had destroyed me. I asked Amy what she told her. Amy said she told her the truth, that I joined a running club, lost weight, seemed happier, was dating someone nice, had a dog. There was silence on Natalie's end. Then she thanked Amy and hung up. Amy said she felt obligated to warn me, that Natalie might reach out, that she seemed unwell, obsessive. I told Amy thanks for the heads up, but I doubted Natalie would contact me. She'd made it clear I wasn't part of her trajectory anymore. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find an email from Natalie. Not to my personal email, to my school email, which meant she'd had to look up the school website to find it since I'd blocked her everywhere else. The email was long, rambling, started with small talk about hoping I was well, then shifted to her talking about how difficult the past few months had been, how her new position was challenging, how she'd been reflecting on our relationship. She never apologized, never admitted she'd been wrong, just talked about her experience, her feelings, her journey. At the end, she suggested we meet for coffee, talk, see how we both were doing. I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me was curious. Part of me wanted closure. Part of me wondered if she'd finally realized what she'd thrown away. But mostly I just felt tired. I didn't respond. Deleted the email. Blocked her for my school email, too. Rachel noticed I was quiet that night. Asked if I was okay. I told her about the email. She didn't say anything for a minute, then asked what I wanted to do. I said I didn't want to do anything. That chapter of my life was closed. I was happy where I was now. Why would I reopen something that had hurt so much? Rachel kissed me, Said she was glad I felt that way, but that she'd support whatever I decided. That's when I knew she was different. She wasn't threatened by my past, wasn't competing with my ex, just cared about me being okay. I thought that would be the end of it, that Natalie would accept my silence as an answer and move on with her successful life. But then things got weird. Amy called again, said Natalie had contacted her multiple times, asking more questions, wanting to know where I was running, what races I'd signed up for, if Rachel was serious or just a rebound. Amy told her to stop, said it was inappropriate. Natalie got defensive, said she just cared about my well-being. Amy told her that caring about someone's well-being doesn't involve stalking them through their family members. Jake mentioned one of his friends had seen someone who looked like Natalie at one of our group runs, sitting in a car at the trailhead just watching. He wasn't sure if it was her, just thought it was strange. Then Rachel told me she'd gotten a weird message on social media from an account with no profile picture, asking questions about me, how long we'd been dating. If I'd talked about my ex, Rachel ignored it and blocked the account. It all felt too coordinated to be coincidence. I was sitting in my living room one evening grading papers while Cooper slept on the couch next to me when I saw headlights through the window. A car parked down the street, engine off, just sitting there. I watched for a few minutes. The car didn't move. I grabbed Cooper's leash and took him outside for a walk, curious. As I got closer to the car, I recognized it. Natalie's new car, the expensive one she'd gotten with her fancy promotion. She was sitting in the driver's seat looking at her phone. Didn't notice me approaching until Cooper barked. She looked up. Our eyes met for a second. Neither of us moved. Then I walked over to her window. She rolled it down, looked smaller somehow. Tired. I didn't yell. Didn't ask what she was doing. Just stood there holding my dog's leash, waiting. She started crying. Said she was sorry, that she'd made a mistake, that she missed me, that she thought leaving would make her happy, but she just felt empty. That watching me move on was killing her. I listened to all of it. Let her finish. Then I said I was sorry she was struggling, that I hoped she found what she was looking for, but that I'd moved on, that I was happy now, that I'd built a life I actually enjoyed living. She asked if we could try again, start over. I said no, not angry, not vindictive, just honest. She asked about Rachel. I said Rachel was important to me, that what we had was real, that I wasn't interested in revisiting a relationship that had made me feel inadequate for years. Natalie looked shocked. Said she never meant to make me feel that way, that she'd always loved me. I told her maybe she had. But love wasn't enough. When one person made the other feel like a burden. When success became more important than partnership. When someone's salary determined their worth. She cried harder. Asked what she was supposed to do now. I said that wasn't my problem to solve anymore. That she needed to figure out her own life just like I'd figured out mine. I told her to stop contacting my family. Stop stalking my social media. Stop parking outside my apartment. That if she couldn't respect my boundaries, I'd consider legal options. She nodded, said she understood, apologized again. I walked back inside with Cooper, didn't look back, heard her car start a few minutes later, watched from the window as she drove away. Rachel came over an hour later. I told her everything. She held my hand, asked if I was okay. I said, yeah, I actually was. That night, lying in bed with Rachel asleep next to me and Cooper snoring at our feet, I thought about the past few months. I'd lost an 8-year marriage, but I'd gained myself back. I wasn't the same guy Natalie had left. I was stronger, healthier, happier. I had genuine friends, a partner who valued me for who I was, not what I earned. A dog, a life that felt authentic instead of performed. Natalie had expected me to fall apart without her, to come crawling back, to prove that she'd been the valuable one in the relationship. Instead, I'd proven that I'd been undervalued for years, that my worth had nothing to do with my salary or status, that I could build something better on my own. The divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because I stopped loving Natalie, but because it forced me to start loving myself. Final update. It's been 2 weeks since the parking lot conversation. Natalie hasn't contacted me or my family. Haven't seen her car around. I think she finally accepted that it's over. Rachel and I are doing great. We're planning a hiking trip next month. Nothing fancy. Just two people who enjoy each other's company exploring trails and eating questionable gas station snacks. Cooper's thriving. Turns out he's part border collie, which explains why he's insane about running. He comes with me on shorter runs now. Loves it. Work's been good. My students actually retained information about Reconstruction this year. Small victories. I ran a half marathon last weekend. Personal best time. Jake and the running club were all there cheering. Rachel was at the finish line with Cooper and a bottle of water. Simple moment, but it meant everything. I thought the divorce would destroy me. Instead, it rebuilt me into someone I actually respect. Someone who doesn't measure his worth by someone else's standards. Someone who knows the difference between being needed and being valued. Natalie wanted me to be devastated, to prove she'd been the prize in the relationship, that my life would fall apart without her. Instead, my life started. She's still out there somewhere, chasing the next promotion, the next achievement, the next thing that'll prove she's important. Meanwhile, I'm running trails with my dog, building a real partnership with someone who sees me as enough, and teaching teenagers about dead presidents. I won the divorce, not because I make more money or have the better life on paper, but because I'm happy with what I have instead of constantly chasing what I don't. That's the difference between us now. She's still running towards something. I've already arrived. Guys, we are so close to hitting 3,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It really helps us hit that 3,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.